for us. That would be.
So it's now recording, guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just need the slide deck and we will be ready to go.
Oh, you need me to share the, yes.
Actually, Paul, we decided we're doing away with the slides today. You're going to improvise the entire thing in the form of dance.
What tree
Our
am
audience.
I? What tree am I?
What tree am I? Can you get?
Okay, I have a question for you guys. In this Google slide, how do I share it full screen?
Just go to present.
Go to present. Where is present? Oh, present.
Up in the right corner.
Okay, all right.
I'm just feeling like my neck might be bleeding. Sorry about that. Got cut. Something.
So do you all see the
Now we do.
you do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
All right. You wanna get started?
Yes, ma'am. So
Hold on. I need to
did we let everybody in?
yes.
Yes. Also, somebody needs to comment on how shocking it is that Mung picked the Jujube main slide for this presentation.
Not
Shocking.
me.
Actually,
me.
I did that
That's Chrissy. That's Chrissy.
because of my dirty dancing experience last night.
You need to clarify that for the audience, or they're going to be very
The
confused.
movie Dirty Dancing. Patrick Swayze in Dirty Dancing.
No, hold on. They're in. I think they're in. Well, Paul, go ahead.
I didn't get to clarify.
Okay, well, we will go right back to that. We have to take our intro here. So welcome to Chat with Green Aggies. It is 13. It is a Thursday, and we are glad that you are here to join us. My name's Paul Winsky. I am the horticulture agent here in Harris County. Joining us today is Dr. Chrissy Seegers, who is our turf specialist up at the Dallas Center. Dr. Becky Bowling, who is our urban water specialist, also at the Dallas Center. And last but not least, our fearless leader, Dr. Mung Gu, professor and extension horticulturist stationed at College Station. So before we jump into the slides, Chrissy has something that she's got to share with us. So,
Okay, well, I'll clarify my previous statement. Since Mung loves Jujube so much, I was watching the movie Dirty Dancing last night, and the main character, Patrick Swayze, said that he was once down on his luck and he survived on eating jujubes alone. So there you
Just
go.
to clarify, Texas A&M AgriLife is not explicitly endorsing the movie Dirty Dancing. It's just a random aside.
But it is
so
a
my
great
question
movie.
though, is it jujubes the fruit or jujubes the candy?
I don't know.
Which is probably, let's delve into that a little bit.
Who
That's going to be a
knows?
whole nother program.
I mean, the fruit of jujubes are nature's candy.
That's
Right, Mung?
okay. There you go. There's the byline for it. I think you should be in marketing. All right. So can I forward the slides or do, here we go, trees. So today, we are going to talk about trees that are rooted in American history. So we've each grabbed a tree or several trees, some of us, and we will be talking about not only the tree, but how it ties in with a part of our history here in the United States. So I am up first, so I am going to talk about Jesse Owens and this English oak, so Quercus robur. And you can see the image here. This is the original tree, and the story behind it is rather interesting, which we're going to go through. So we always say plants always have the story behind some of these plants is always more interesting than the plants itself. So next slide. So we've got to get the botanical information out of the way. So English oak, you can see it is zone 5 through 8. So we are not going to find it down here. Well, at least in my part of Texas. Maybe further north, you may see it up there. But it is a large tree. Height and spread are both 40 to 70 feet. Once established, very drought tolerant. And the interesting thing is it will not produce acorns for the first 25 to 30 years. So you're not going to have to clean up after this tree in the fall when it drops those acorns. which probably makes it breeding very difficult. So definitely going to have some time into that before you can do any kind of pollinations. Next slide. So we talked about the, what the oak is. So we all know 1936 Olympics were in Berlin. Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals. Hitler was in power then, so he basically destroyed that myth of Aryan superiority. But the interesting thing was all gold medalists, they received an oak tree, an oak sapling, as part of their gift from the country of Germany. And it was because it was the national tree of Germany. So Jesse, of course, he had 4 gold medals, so he received 4 of these trees. So these trees were planted in various spots. So they know for sure the tree that we looked at and we'll look at again is that I had the image of is at the James Ford Rhodes High School in Cleveland, Ohio. And this is where he trained. He did a lot of training there growing up. There's also one that they think is at Ohio State, and they're in the process of doing some DNA work to see if they can match it with the one that is at this Rhodes High School in Cleveland. Then the story goes that they think there's one at USC, or that it was planted at USC because he was part of the 4x100 relay that won the gold medal. And then there was one that was planted at his mother's house where she grew up, but that house has since been demolished and that tree is no longer there. So this is the story behind the 4 trees, and we're going to talk about the one that's at the high school in Cleveland, Ohio. So next slide. So here's Jesse with the plants. So they were pretty good looking plants that he did receive. That, remember, this is 1936. So this is 85 years ago. So this is 2 of the 4 that he did receive. Next slide. And here's this tree at the high school. So this is that 85-year-old tree. And it's really kind of interesting because the current track coach is a descendant, a relative of Jesse Owens. And over the past 70, 80 years, whenever any of the student athletes in track qualify for the state meet, and if they podium, so if they come in the first 3 places, gold, silver, or bronze, their pictures are taken in front of this tree as part of that legacy. So it's got a rather interesting story. You can see rather open branching, fan shaped. You can see there's some decline in the tops of this tree, but overall this tree seems to be doing pretty well. So there's been some concern about this tree. They don't want to lose this tree. So if we go to the next slide, this legacy does live on. So 2 nurseries got together, Holden Forest and Garden and Klin nurseries. They were able to propagate this tree, and they've planted 4 clones around the area in order to keep this tree alive and continue to tell the story. So they were just planted recently also. April of 2021 was planted at the Rockefeller Park Lagoon, which is part of the Cleveland Botanic Garden. And that's what this image is, where this tree was planted. And so they call it Quercus robar, and they've got it in parentheses, Jesse Owens. One was planted at his old middle school. It's now a high school, East Tech High School. And so one was planted there. One, of course, was put at Ohio State, which is where he competed as a college student. And then the other one was planted at the front yard of the house that Owens bought for his parents. So they've got 4 of these clones now. They are established, but it's rather interesting that from 1936 and everything that Jesse Owens did in order to that he faced, that these trees and this legacy lives on. Okay.
All right, it's my turn. I've learned a lot of history about trees in doing some research on this stuff, so it's been pretty neat actually. So I chose to talk about the Texas live oak Quercus fusiformis. It is a species of oak that's very similar to our southern live oak, which is Quercus virginiana. And you can also see that it's got a lot of different names that you might hear it called by. And so you can call it whatever you want, but in this regard, we're going to call it Texas live oak. And so it has a native range from southern Oklahoma all the way to northern Mexico. So it's very native to Texas, very used throughout Texas. Some differences of it and the southern live oak are that they're pretty indistinguishable until you start looking at the acorns. And you can see here on the left photo that the acorns are slightly larger than the southern live oak, and they're also more pointed with a more pointed apex there. It's also better for a lot of our climate in Texas because it's more drought and more cold hardy than the southern live oak. In general, I think the southern live oak will prefer a little bit more of a moist environment where we can see the Texas live oak thriving in some of our drought and some of our cold hardy situations. However, you know, we don't find this all over the state of Texas in huge amounts. I think we see it more in central Texas down to southern Texas. It really doesn't thrive, I don't believe, in our really blackland clay soils up in the northern part of Texas. So we see it more often down in the southern part of Texas. All right, you can move on. So there is a champion Texas live oak in Texas. It's in Bosque County. As far as I know, and as far as I could find, this is the largest known tree of its species in the United States, and you can see how big it is. In 2016, it was added to the National Register of Champion Trees with a trunk circumference of 342 inches, height of 63 feet, and crown spread of about 93 feet. So that's pretty large. And what I could find about one of the larger southern live oaks in Texas is this one is a few inches bigger in circumference than our biggest live oak in Texas. Now, that might not still be true, but what I could find based on some of that, it was. So it's pretty cool. If you're ever in Bosque County, you can look up the exact location of this tree on the National Register of Champion Trees, and you can go visit it, get your photo taken next to it. Okay, next. Hopefully most of you on this webinar have heard of the treaty oak. The treaty oak is in Austin, Texas. It's, they say, about 500 years old. And what it's famous for is being one of the last remaining what they call the council oaks. And so if you've ever been to Austin, if you've ever read about the treaty oak, then it's pretty neat. It's got pretty neat history. And so it was kind of known, it was in a group of 14 different trees, and they were called the council oaks. And there was like an imaginary boundary between the cluster of the trees that were basically a line between the Native Americans and the early settlers. And so they say that it was a meeting ground for two different Indian tribes in particular, and that they used to meet here at this oak tree to kind of just decide if they were going to go to war or decide if they were going to make peace. Now, some of the popular kind of folklore or legends from this tree say that back in the 1830s that Texas's own Stephen F. Austin actually met one of the tribes or both of the tribes at this tree and kind of discuss the first ever boundary treaty of Texas, because there were some unfortunate events where a few people got killed, and they wanted to make peace at this tree. Now, there are no known actual factual reports of this, but this is what they used to say. So it's actually pretty neat to think about. So in 1927, this was the only tree of the council oaks that was left. And so they put it into the American Forest Hall of Fame for trees in Washington, D.C., where they say it's the most perfect specimen of the North American tree. So it's pretty neat. You can actually still go see this tree in Austin. And so one of the things that's most famous with this tree is that in 1989, there was a deliberate poisoning of this tree. And so they used a herbicide from DuPont. It was called Velspar or Velpar. I should have written it down. I think it was Velpar. And so they say that the person who poisoned the tree, his name was Paul Cullen. They say he used enough herbicide to actually kill 100 trees. And, you know, there's a lot of things going on to try to save the tree. It's before it was poisoned, it had a really wide span. After it was poisoned, you can kind of see in the right photo there is kind of, or the left photo is what it looked like before, the right photo is what it looked like after it was poisoned. And so they say that Ross Perot supposedly wrote a blank check back in that time to do anything they could to save this tree, anything that you can do to save the tree. And so it survived. It's not as full as it used to be. It's kind of one-sided now with full, but it started producing acorns again in 1997. And so a lot of folks in the area that were involved in some tree societies came out. They gathered the acorns, they germinated them, and they spread them around the state of Texas and also around other parts of the United States to save this tree. So pretty neat history. You can go see this and read about it and, you know, make whatever assumptions you want about kind of the folklore. So it's pretty neat. Okay, so that's the treaty oak. Next, I have one more slide. Now, I hesitated to talk about the battle oaks because I wasn't sure if it was a Texas live oak or if it was a southern live oak. So some of the sources say it's a southern live oak. Some of the sources say it's a Texas live oak. The UT Botanical organization, they call it a Texas live oak, so we're going to go with them since it is on their campus. But it is a landmark on the University of Texas campus. There's 3 of these trees, and so going back through some history, back in the Civil War, the Southern troops got notified that the Northern troops were coming down, coming up from Galveston actually, and they were thinking about building some type of fort to protect the capital area. And in order to do that, they had to cut down a large group of oak trees, and then only these 3 trees were left on the kind of the perimeter. They never built the fort. And so those trees got cut down for no reason really, right? They probably would have got cut down eventually anyway because of the campus. But anyway, in the 1920s, the campus of UT in Austin were thinking about building a new biology building or some new buildings or what have it. And in order to do that, they were going to have to cut down these trees. And so Dr. Robert Batts at the time was a professor of law at UT, later was like the head of the board of regents or whatever. And it was said that he quoted that he'll come down to Austin with a shotgun to save these trees. And so I think, you know, that letter, along with a lot of protests from students, from faculty, from staff, from the community, Dr. William Battle was, I can't remember if he was the president of the university at the time or what, but he basically worked with everybody to save these trees. And so that's why they were known as the battle oaks, because Dr. William Battle was fighting to preserve them. So you can go to the campus on UT Austin. At UT Austin, you can see these battle oaks that are there. So pretty neat history. I think I do have one more slide. So I found this while I was kind of looking at the battle oaks and the information about the UT Austin campus, and they have something that's called the Tree Keeper. So you can go to the website and it basically maps all the trees that they have on the campus of at UT Austin. And so you can click those little green dots and they'll show you, you know, hey, this is this tree here. There's this many trees here of this species, what have it. And so you can basically see all about the trees. Some of them have measurements of the circumference, the height, all types of things. And then you can also go into one part of the website that's cost and energy savings. And it tells, hey, there's 4,800 approximate trees on campus. Here's the total yearly eco benefits that we get from that: greenhouse gas benefits, water benefits, energy benefits, air quality, property. And so it's pretty neat to see that kind of return on investment, right? And how these trees are not only beautifying the campus, shading it and all that, but also giving us back money and ecological benefits from having those trees on the campus. So pretty cool information you can find on just going to Tree Keeper website. And that's pretty much all I've got about the oak trees.
Hey, Chrissy, I was looking for this little book, but I probably put it away since I'm moving. This Tree Keeper, this website reminded me of an app. I graduated from Beijing Forestry University, and then some undergrad students in the horticulture department, in the ornamental horticulture department, they just started on this own, and they mapped all the trees. They mapped all the trees on the campus. So so I remember when we were learning landscape plants, when we were woody landscape plants, when we were having the class, the teacher will take us to this location, that location, and for us, help us to identify the trees, learn about the trees, the woody plants, not only trees and shrubs. So those students just did this on their own, and then made it open to all students who want to, who want to learn about these campus plants on their own, and they even published a little booklet. It was so neat. I really wish that someone here, we definitely have the talent here among our A&M students. If they could do that, that would just be so awesome.
Yeah, and they could do it for, like you said, not only trees, but a lot of the landscape plants, and it would be very helpful. And
trees and shrubs were more likely long term versus the annuals that so
it'd be neat.
Hackberry,
that's me. So I did want to give a little bit of context to why we picked this topic area today, because we didn't really talk about it at the beginning, but we as a group decided to kind of focus our efforts this month on the US of A. So we kind of, in recognition of July 4th, we thought it'd be really fun to focus on how plants are kind of integrated into different parts of American culture. So we'll share our schedule for the month of July toward the end here, but that's kind of what drove a lot of this today. And I just wanted to share that with you guys. I picked the hackberry tree to talk about today, mostly because I have one in my backyard. And, when we moved in, we've had people over and this and that. And a lot of times hackberry gets kind of referred to as a trash tree or a weed tree, which I think is unfair. I love our hackberry tree. It's very large. And as you can see here, it's often touted as being kind of a really tough tree. And so while it doesn't offer maybe the quality of wood or some of the other characteristics of other trees, it does have a lot of strengths that it brings to the landscape, including one in particular that I resonate with quite a bit. So just share a little bit of background here. One is that it is adapted to grow in a very wide range of soil types. So if you look up the types of soil that it can thrive in, the list is very long. It's not going to be especially picky, which is a nice thing for the state of Texas, where we have a lot of diversity in our soils. So I don't know if we've ever talked about this on here before or not, but in the world, there are 12 soil orders, 12 larger ways in which we classify soils. And here in the state of Texas, we actually have 9 of them, 7 more so than the other 2. But we do technically have 9. And so it's almost as though we have representation of like 75% of the world's soils here just in the state of Texas, which is really cool. And, we get people that join from all over the state, and we see a lot of variability. So plant materials that can grow in multiple soil types are always a big plus, right? We also see that the hackberry can grow in areas where you have precipitation ranging from anywhere from 14 to 60 inches of rain per year, which is almost exactly what the range is here in the state of Texas. So when we're over in the El Paso area, far west Texas, we're typically seeing about 7 to 12 inches of rain a year on average. And then as we go over to far east Texas, we're in Nacogdoches, we're 55, 60 inches of rain a year on average. This year has been a little unusual. I mean, we know we have some unpredictable behavior in our Texas weather. That's just part of the Texas charm, right? And so again, another strength. And then similarly, we see that the hackberry can thrive in hardiness zones ranging from 3 to 9. Here in the state of Texas, we range from, I believe, 5 to 9. 5 and far up in the Panhandle, all the way to 9 if you go down into the valley. And so we do have quite a range in hardiness zones here as well. So it's definitely a tough tree. It's a medium to fast growing tree. So typically we see a height increase anywhere between 13 and 24 inches per year. And at maturity, we see this tree reach about 40 to 60 feet in height with a similar width or reach. And so gets to be pretty large. The one in my yard is a pretty nice shade tree, so it offers those nice benefits. And then my favorite thing about it is very popular with wildlife. So it does produce this edible berry. The berry is edible for people, not especially palatable. It's kind of thin and dry, and people compare the taste, I think, to like dates. And so I don't know that it's like the tastiest thing, but if you were ever out in the wild living off the land, it is something that you could technically eat. And it is something that we see a lot of our birds and similar wildlife in our yards eat. So yeah, mung mung.
So not as good as jujubes, right?
No. No, I don't think so. But in my yard, I see we've got a ton of squirrels that are always in the hackberry. I know not everybody likes squirrels, but I think I would be sad if I didn't see any squirrels in my neighborhood. And then a lot of birds. We've got a bluebird nest, and then we've got a blue jay nest, I should say. And then we've got a lot of mockingbirds, and mockingbirds do really like this tree. So if you really like to attract that wildlife to your lawn, to your landscape, this can be a nice addition, relatively fast growing, not very high maintenance. The one in my yard is maybe not the prettiest tree in the world, but I don't care. It's big, it gives me shade, it's got a lot of life in it, and that's what I love about it. Next slide. So I thought I would just share a little bit of how this tree was used in history, and then I'm going to share kind of a fun fact about it. So this has got a pretty tough, flexible wood. It's not going to be as high quality of wood as a lot of other trees may be able to provide. But back in the day, it did create a suitable option for creating barrel hoops because of that flexibility. It also was a popular choice on cabin floors. And the tough nature of this tree is such that it can tolerate some degree of flooding, which makes it kind of a nice option around riverbanks and things like that as a way of preventing erosion and minimizing flooding issues. I also read that the bark of this tree has been used for centuries, or was used for centuries by Native American cultures for a variety of medicinal purposes. And so it was used actually to regulate menstrual cycles in women, and it had some very interesting purposes in those cultures. So it's definitely been a part of our culture for a really long time, which I thought was interesting. And then next slide. I really liked this. So Edgar Allan Poe's home in Richmond, Virginia, which is now the Edgar Allan Poe Museum. There's 3 trees, I think, that were there when he was living that he used to love and admire. And one in particular is the hackberry that really towers over the grounds here. It stands out quite a bit. And it was one that he admired quite a bit, and was there when he was completing some of his greatest works. And you can actually purchase cuttings of the hackberry tree from the Edgar Allan Poe Museum if you want to have a little piece of that same tree that used to watch over Edgar Allan Poe when he did his writing. So I thought that was pretty cool, kind of a fun place in which the hackberry's been there. I would say a largely unappreciated tree, but appreciated by Edgar Allan Poe. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Keith Hansen commented that look at the English ivy growing up the trunk. So Keith, I think this is our last slide before I dive into crepe myrtles. Keith, do you have any other input about the trees that we have talked about? These trees in American history.
Well, I just thought that the first one with Jesse Owens was very fascinating. Of course, I was born in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio, and there are a lot of cool trees up there, but I had no idea about the English oak. Are y'all going to talk about ginkgos?
Well, that's an immigrant, and we're only going to limit our immigrant tree to the next one. to this.
Well,
So
but
so
English oak is an immigrant tree too. So
um so no
Keith, are you thinking about the James Madison connection specifically with the ginkgo, or what were you thinking about?
I was thinking about the famous Hubbard ginkgo that's on the grounds of Tyler City Hall.
oh, I've seen the picture of that one, but no.
Okay.
So Keith, for right now that I like crepe myrtle just a little better than ginkgo. I love ginkgos, but I just like crepe.
She's
I
got more
understand.
money to talk about crepe myrtle, so
Yeah, right. Okay.
And in case that I think Keith, you were in our the episode before. Oh, well, it was our last. It was in our last episode that I mentioned some of the edible. Our last episode was edible landscapes, where I did mention ginkgo. Yes, as one of the edible landscape trees. I know that a lot of us folks that here, do not like the smell of the rotten fruit, the flesh, but the nuts inside was quite chewy, quite nutty, quite flavorful. So, all right, I'm gonna move on to I call this immigrant tree. It's not native. It's not native in the U.S. Crepe myrtles are not native in the U.S., but it's been introduced to the southern U.S. since the 1790s. So you could imagine that it has been here for a long time. It's a premier southern summer flowering tree in the southeast and south central USA. There are many of different forms, either being a single trunk or a multi-trunk. There are some older varieties. Those are mainly the indica, Lagostromia indica varieties, watermelon red, William Tuvey, Near East, Griffin or Griffith, weeping pink, those things. One of the crepe myrtle, Basham's Party Pink is one of the Texas superstars. So in the late 70s and late 80s, there has been a lot of work done by the U.S. National Arboretum that they incorporated the powdery mildew resistance from Lagostromia aurea into the indica varieties. So from that, the U.S. National Arboretum has come out with many crepe myrtle hybrids or improved indica varieties. So today, I will mention, since we're on this patriotic 4th of July theme this whole month, and I'll just mention some of the old and some of the new varieties in the color of red, blue, and white. So let's take a tour. So Dynamite is a relatively old one. So when I say old one, not necessarily as old as the 70s, the 80s, but if some of these they had patent, the patent will probably expired. That means if you want to propagate this and sell this, you could do that, because the patent normally lasts for 20 years. Versus some of the new ones, the patent, they still have the patent. So that means you can't just, propagate and for profit. You have to get an agreement before you propagate and sell these plants for profit. So Dynamite is a very vivid red, bright red. Miss Francis is a relatively new one, has very similar reddish color. This is a medium-sized tree, medium-sized shrub, I should say. So there are three, I think Miss Francis, there are several other misses. They have a slightly different color. So this is a Princess Zoe. Princess Zoe, in the Princess series, there are three cultivars. Princess Zoe has this very reddish color, bright red color. Enduring Summer Red, Enduring Summer has a series, it's a series. So in Enduring Summer series, there are several colors, and there is a red color. There's a red color. By the way, my cream myrtle plot is right next to Dr. Dave Burns' rose plot. And what you see here are some of, it looks like Rose rugosa. Enduring Summer, what we have seen in the field. By the way, these plants were planted in 2019. So they just been in the field. This is their third year. So we are looking at all these different cultivars, looking at all these different cultivars, see how they were doing in terms of disease instance and insect instance. So the diseases that we're looking at are mainly, one is powdery mildew, and the second being Cercospora leaf spot. And for insects, we're looking at either cream myrtle aphids or cream myrtle bark scale. So those are the two main things, two main insects that we're looking at. So Enduring Summer Red has this. Enduring Summer is a relatively small to medium size crepe myrtle. It flowers fairly early, and a lot of their progenies, their babies, their plant babies, tend to flower pretty early. Cherry Mocha. Cherry Mocha is when I first got Cherry Mocha, it's from a nursery. It's from Waters Garden Nursery in Michigan. The label came, it says perennial. It flowers fairly early, very dark foliage, very vivid flower color. Only one thing about the Cherry Mocha. It's so Cherry Mocha is in this Barista series. So the names, I think I have another one later in this series. They use these, drink they name these cultivars after those drinks. So Cherry Mocha has this cherryish color, and the only one thing about this series is the heavy seed set. So after all the flowers gone, you end up with a lot of seed heads, very heavy. Not too attractive, those seed heads. I hate to say that. So this is a ebony fire. It's also known in the industry as black diamond crimson red. The red, bright red flower color, on this mainly dark foliage, dark leaf foliage. So this is a Princess Holy-Ann. So we're transition slightly from red to bluish. There's no true blue color in the crepe myrtle, among the crepe myrtle cultivars. So we're mainly looking at lavenderish, purplish, reddish purple. So those colors, that's what we're gonna do for the color blue. This is a pink velour, and as you can see that, different from the previous, reddish color, they have a little blue hue in it. Pink velour is a great cultivar. In the early springtime, the new leaves come out bright reddish, very bright reddish, and it's actually used as, in some areas, as screens, as barriers to provide that color. This is a Centennial Spirit, is a relatively older one, smaller. This is actually a pretty big tree, but in our trial, it hasn't grown that big yet. So lavenderish, so on the left is First Lavender, and on the right is Velma's Royal Delight. So if you compare the color of these two, First Lavender the color is lighter compared to Velma's Royal Delight. Velma's Royal Delight is probably one of those very, very purple, very purple flower color. So take a close look. This is first lavender. And also the picture shows you, just relative size of these plants in their third year. And look at this is a Velmus rhodila. So both of these are older cultivars. This is a lavender blast. Lavender blast is a new one. Is a relatively new one. Probably just been on the market for the last 5 years. About for the last 5 years. So lavender blast with the lavender flower with the greenish, very dark foliage. Purely purple, very purple flowers with very dark foliage. So this is one of the, I forgot to put the name as a black diamond. This is one of the black diamond in the black diamond series. So the original black diamond series, the colors are not patented. And then later on, the nursery added, Shea Berry Nursery added purely purple. So purely purple is one that's patented. Endurance Summer Lavender. Remember in the red color, we had Endurance Summer Red, and this is Endurance Summer Lavender. Endurance Summer Lavender, one of the nice things that I noticed about the Endurance Summer series that, compared to the Cherry Mocha that we saw, that you can see that the, they don't seed too much. They don't seed as much as the Cherry Mocha, the Barista series. So what that tells you that they could, flower for a relatively longer time. Acoma. So now we come into the white ones, the white cultivars. Acoma is a medium-sized tree. If you look at that, the USDA National Arboretum posters, this Acoma is on that poster. It's a relatively medium-sized tree, small to medium-sized, and then the branches are, kind of pendulous. They have very heavy flowers. Natchez is kind of like one of the standard big white crepe myrtle trees everywhere that you see. I mean, you see Natchez pretty much everywhere. It's one of those standard big trees. I think in the College Station area, we just passed the peak flowering season for Natchez. And one of the nice things that's not reflected in this picture is the bark, is the cinnamony bark of Natchez. Look stunningly beautiful in the winter time. So Sarah's favorite white is a close relative, is a very close relative of Natchez. If you ask me what the difference between the two of them, I really I can't tell. I can't tell the difference. They were from the original breeding program. They were very closely related. And some would say the bark of the Natchez looks prettier than Sarah's favorite white. Some will say Sarah's favorite white got better looking, get better looking bark. So that's all personal preference. That's all personal preference. So I can't dispute either way. When you say hackberry berries are better, or you say jujube berries are better, so that's all personal preference. So I can't judge on that. Byers white is a very old cultivar from a Byers nursery, which specialized in crepe myrtles. They have a lot of their crepe myrtles in the old varieties. So early bird white, early bird is a fairly small. It's a fairly small cultivar. It flowers fairly early in the round shape. So you notice that in the poster, I should have mentioned a little bit more about the poster. In that poster, there are various size from very small Pocomoke chicksaw to Natchez, to Biloxi, to Miami. So to those very tall trees. So in these new development, like these series, like this early bird series, and people are pushing, looking at earlier flowering or longer flowering. So all these different traits. Like a latte is also that is also the Barista series, as in the cherry mocha. It's a white flower over very dark foliage. And it's a small, medium size flower very early. The only thing is these little seed head. So Moonlight Magic, in the Magic series, there are quite a few cultivars. So there are green leaf cultivars. There are also dark leaf cultivars. So the Moon Magic is relatively from our observation, relatively not as prone to powdery mildew as some of the other dark leaves. So this Moonlight Magic. So that was the last slide of my presentation, and I just want to go through the our July programs with you all. So today is about trees in the USA. We're just going to talk about popular trees. And that's what we did. And because my personal preference on crepe myrtle, I spend a lot of time on crepe myrtle. I actually recently did a presentation for the Texas Master Gardener conference. In that one, I spent a lot of time to talk about the new crepe myrtle cultivars, which I selected just a few, to feature in today's presentation. But if you all are interested, I'll be happy to share that one with you. That one just focusing on the new cultivars of crepe myrtles. All right, July the 15th, Chrissy or Becky, you want to talk about the turf grass program on July the 15th?
Sure, I will. I think Chrissy's got to jump off here in a couple minutes, but she did do a really nice job of booking some special guests for us. The first thing that we're going to talk about next week, which I'm actually really excited about, is a little background on the history of the American lawn, which may sound like, why are we talking about that on Chat with Green Aggies? But the reason that we wanted to discuss it is that a lot of the cultural history of the lawn here in the US actually drives our expectations for what a lawn should look like, which has a huge impact on the management decisions that we make. And many of those management decisions are increasingly coming under scrutiny for their environmental responsibility, their sustainability. And so all of these things are kind of connected. And a lot of times we're not even aware of it. We're not aware of how some of these cultural things are deeply ingrained in the decisions that we make, the expectations that we have for our lawn, and how all of that's connected to this much bigger picture. So we're going to talk a little bit about all of that and what this means in terms of maybe modifying our expectations some to create a more sustainable scenario for the lawns that we have here in Texas. So we'll talk a lot about that. And then we are going to have a couple guests on to talk about two things that are in Washington, D.C. So one of those that we thought would be really interesting is the renovation of the National Mall. So the turf grass areas in the National Mall, very, very heavily trafficked, probably among the most trafficked areas in the country. They have many, many events that happen there every day. And so a couple of years ago, they decided to essentially renovate those areas to try to help them be more tolerant of that traffic. So we're going to have some guests on to talk about some of those things that were done. And this can be really helpful for those of you that manage those types of areas, kind of thinking about what are ways that we can work around that in order to create an area that's going to be more tolerant of that traffic. One advantage that we have one of the advantages that we have here in Texas and in the US is that, or in the southern US, is that we are often dealing with warm season turf grasses like Bermuda grass, which have the ability to produce lateral stems, whereas up in the north, a lot of times the cool season grasses that they use may not have that ability. And so we may see that they have to do a lot more heavy overseeding, whereas on our end, we can do a lot of things to just encourage that Bermuda grass to recover, or whatever that warm season grass is. So we'll talk about all of that. And then they'll also talk about the really interesting grassroots exhibit that's there in Washington, D.C., which is kind of a walking homage to grass. So you can walk around and learn all about grass in the US. And so it's pretty neat. So we'll talk about that.
Okay. Oh, sorry. So, and then on the 22nd, we are going to have two our panelists, Laura Miller and Paul Winsky, to talk about the 2021 California Spring Trials. What's new in red, white, and blue. And they, if y'all notice that they were, they were not present during several of our previous chat with Green Aggies because they were on the tour. They were in California looking all those nice flowers, those nice trials at various breeding companies. So they are going to bring us a report of what they were seeing at those trials. And then the last Thursday, July the 29th, for the landscape, we're going to have Dr. Kevin Ong and Dr. Rafi they're the bugs and fuzz team. They will talk about the red, white, and blue, bugs, fungi, and all that kind of thing. So, so stay tuned. By the way, the registration link that got you here, it's good for all four. If you selected all four events, the link is, I think the link is the same. So in case you weren't able to join us, you could always watch our previous episodes on the YouTube. Just go to Texas Plant Clinic, and it's a playlist on the YouTube, Texas Plant Clinic YouTube. There are several playlists, and our playlist is Chat with the Green Aggies. So really hope that you could just reach out to us either way. Just many ways that you could reach us. Please just utilize all those channels, and we always want your feedback. It's at sixleggedaggie.com chat survey. As always, we appreciate your input. And that's the end of our presentation today. And we appreciate you all's attention and hope to see you next week. And I think after Becky did all the promo, all of you should be here next week, right, Chrissy?
Yes, very exciting.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.